Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Crystal with Emerson Aurora Design. And today I'm going to show you this fun paint skin technique using pouring paints from the Hippie Crafter. This is an acrylic pouring paint set that the Hippie Crafter sent to me to try out. And I thought this would be a fun way to do a paint skin technique on a tumbler. Thank you so much, Hippie Crafter, for sending me these paints to try out. I've been wanting to try out some acrylic paint pouring for a while now. This comes in a set of multiple colors, very pretty primary and secondary colors here. I'm just organizing them rainbow pattern because, that's how I am. Lots of colors to choose from. These are already pre-mixed, perfect for pouring acrylic paint. You can use this on canvases, tumblers, any kind of art projects, but of course I'm going to try this on a tumbler. I've done the acrylic pouring before on canvases, and that's kind of something that I started out doing before tumblers. It's a lot of fun. If you haven't tried it yet, give it a try. So easy, and these paints just make it easier because you don't have to mix regular acrylic paint with any other type of medium to make it thinner. These are already pre-mixed and ready to go. So I'm using this cookie sheet that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to line this with some wax paper. This is important so that you can peel your paint skin off once it dries. And I chose a rainbow variety of colors just to give this a try. These are all the colors I'm using. Pour them each in an individual little cup. And I'm going to add some of this treadmill belt lubricant. It's basically a silicone lubricant. You can use coconut hair serum or this. It tends to have the paint kind of repel to allow kind of like little cells to form, if that makes any sense. If you've ever seen acrylic paint pouring before, you'll know what I mean. It just kind of separates the paint so that you can see the colors underneath. So I'm going to take each color here and just pour it into a separate cup together, just kind of layering it on in any form or fashion that you want. Just kind of pour it into layers here. I'm used to doing big canvases with this, so I am used to pouring a lot more than I have. So, but since I'm doing a tumbler, just make sure that you're not using a ton of paint. You just want enough to kind of cover that cookie sheet because that's the perfect size for a 20-ounce tumbler wrap. So I'm just going to kind of swirl it around here and hold on to your wax paper. You can tape your wax paper down. I didn't. It probably would have been easier if I did. But just tilt your cookie sheet back and forth to allow that paint to kind of move around and cover the whole area. Like I said, this size is perfect. This is kind of a smaller cookie sheet. I don't even know what size it is, to be honest, but it ends up being the perfect size for a 20-ounce skinny tumbler. The paint will kind of swirl around. You could take a popsicle stick and kind of spread it through there also, but I don't want to mix up the colors too much because they'll look muddy. I like this kind of tie-dye look about it. You can see that this paint really does move easily, and it keeps its vibrancy, so it's really, really nice. I'm happy with it. Now this is going to take a couple days to dry. I leave this set out on my craft table, probably let it sit for about 2 or 3 days, I believe. I let it dry because you want this completely dry before we move on to our next step. To get some of those cells to pop up, the little bubble kind of look about them, I'm using my torch here. And I'm going to use the rest of the paint because I'm making 2 wraps. And we're going to do 2 tumblers today. So this time I'm going to take the paint directly from each cup. This is another way that you can pour your paints. I'm going to pour them each directly on the wax paper here, just kind of in little puddles. And this will give a different kind of effect with the paint swirl. I'm just layering them on top right there on the directly on the wax paper in little puddles. Sorry for the movement of my camera. I was just trying to get a better angle. These colors, some of them actually have a really pretty metallic look to them. That blue definitely does. And it really does show up on the paint skin. It just adds another layer of shimmer. So here I'm just taking a popsicle stick and dragging it through, kind of in a tie-dye kind of look, just, random. And then from there, I'm going to hold on to my wax paper again and just kind of spread it out, let it go to each corner, and fill this whole section of wax paper. I really love the blue and the purple. That orange is so vibrant. They're just all really pretty colors. I'm just going to kind of fill in the edges here so I make sure that I have a good enough size for my wrap. And like I said, I'll hit it with my torch and then I'm going to let these sit for about 3 days to dry. The thicker the paint, the longer you need it to dry. So this is definitely not a quick project to do. You can make these ahead of time. So here it is all dry. Yes, it is ripped there. It happened when I was trying to pull off the wax paper, but no worries, it will fit back together. I'm taking off the outer layer of wax paper. I won't be able to get all of the wax paper off. You may be able to. I think next time I may try a different backing, maybe a clear plastic backing instead of wax paper. But I'm just going to trim off the edges. They're kind of thin at the edges, just so that I have a nice straight line to do my wrap with. There's no worries that the wax paper's there because I'm going to actually glue this down with Mod Podge. Now so now I have kind of a straight edge there, and here is my cleaned and prepped and sand paint, or I can't even talk today, guys. Sanded and prepped tumbler spray painted white. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it, and you can see that this fits perfectly on this tumbler. I'm going to have a little bit of overhang, which we're going to trim off, but you can put the paint skin directly on the tumbler if you don't have that wax backing like I do. It actually stays kind of sticky, but I'm going to use Mod Podge because I want to make sure that it stays down really well. Plus some of that wax paper is still on the back of my paint skin, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put some Mod Podge on just like I would with a fabric tumbler, just a thin layer of Mod Podge to get a good grip on my paint skin. And you'll see the paint skin is kind of flexible and it can stretch a little bit, so you can actually really mold it to your tumbler if you're using a curved tumbler or a tumbler that maybe is just a tiny bit too big. You can kind of move and manipulate and stretch this. Just be careful because it could rip. But like I said, once you have your paint skin on, and if you have a little rip like I do, you can just kind of smoosh it down with your fingers, warm it up with your hand, and it should, kind of hide that. So I'm just smoothing this out, and it's going to be kind of a textured surface, which is fine. It'll be covered with epoxy later, and you won't even notice that. So some areas may be a little bit more bumpy than others. But just smooth it down the best you can with your hand, and I'm going to take my sharp X-Acto blade and just cut a straight seam. I do my seam first, and then I'll address that top and bottom. And just kind of rub your hand over to get all the little bubbles out because there could be bubbles trapped under. So just kind of go up and down, kind of manipulate that and get as many bubbles out as you can. And here's my second one. They both turn out really pretty. They're giving me kind of 70s tie-dye vibes. I really like it. So we're going to go with that retro 70s look for these tumblers. I'm going to leave the bottom white because we're going to glitter that later. And just roll it on and smooth it out the best you can. This is just another fun little way to do a different kind of design on a tumbler. You could prepare a few of these paint skins in advance and just keep them in your kind of area to use when you need them. They're just fun. You can even have your kids help you with the paint pouring part, and that'd be a neat little tumbler for them to help you with. I'm always big about having the kids help out without the epoxy portion. You can see how nice that lines up. So just a side note, because I did put that silicone oil in the paint, the tumbler is a little slimy, so just so you know that, you're going to get some oil on your hands. We're going to address that here in a minute, but first I'm going to go with a sharp X-Acto blade. I'm just rolling my tumbler across. You can use a edger tool or lay your tumbler on it, or set your tumbler up on its bottom and just have your X-Acto knife kind of spaced out and cut it. Just be real careful when you're doing this. It ended up being pretty straight, but if it's not completely straight, it's fine because I'm going to go in and glitter this bottom later anyway. And once you have that, make sure that you run your hand along it and warm the edge to get that good seal. I'm doing the same thing with the top here. This is a completely straight tumbler, so I was able to get a pretty straight line if you have a steady hand like this. Just be real careful when you're using an X-Acto blade. You don't want any cut fingers. This paint skin is pretty forgiving as far as if you make a mistake or if it cuts too much. Just kind of smush it back down and together with the warmth of your hand and it should be fine. The fun thing about using this kind of method is that no two tumblers will be the same, so you always get a unique design every time. Just going to clean up that seam a little bit more. I had a little more overhang than I wanted. There was a bit of a bump there, so I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. And there we go. So now I'm going to take some rubbing alcohol on a coffee filter, and I'm really going to give this a good washing. Can you see that yellow that's coming off? That is actually the oil. We want all the oil off, because if you don't wash this off, you will get fish eyes. I also seal my tumbler with some clear, Rust-Oleum clear spray before I go to epoxy. I do end up getting a little bit of fish eyeing. Sometimes when you do this acrylic pour method, you do get the fish eyeing, and that's fine. You just sand it down and wipe it down and then put another layer of epoxy on, but you'll see here in a minute. So here are my 2 cups on the turner. They're nice and clean, and I'm going to apply my epoxy. I'm going to add a little bit of this daisy white holographic glitter from Maestro's Creations to my epoxy just to give a little bit of shimmer and shine. A little bit is all you need because I don't want to go crazy with the glitter on this one. I want the paint to be the main focus. And you can see that paint has a little bit of the shimmer to it, metallic shimmer to it. Some of it does. So cute, so cute. So you see how pretty that, well, right now you might not be able to see, but once you get up a little closer, you'll be able to see how pretty that white glitter really makes everything pop. And this is my first layer of epoxy here. I'm going to let this cure, and then I'm using my regular art resin on this, so I let this spin overnight. You could go back in 8 hours later and add a second layer of epoxy. My next layer of epoxy will just be clear. So I do apply that, which I won't show here in the video, but I'm just doing the sparkle right now. We're going to let that cure. I'll do another layer of epoxy, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what I do. So pretty. So this is a couple days later. This has 2 layers of epoxy on it. Now this does have some fish eyeing. You can kind of see that I've already sanded a little so you can see the fish eyes. And I knew this was going to happen. So this is after 2 layers of epoxy. I never sand after the first layer of epoxy because that's too thin of a layer. But with fish eyes, you definitely want to take your sanding block and just kind of rough that up. You can see those there. They're kind of like pitting. And that's because it's repelling against that paint. So I'm just sanding it down really well. And I'm going to sand both of them down really well and do my rims here. I always have a thin layer of stainless exposed between each layer of epoxy so that it can have a good seal. And I'm going to put this back on the turner and put 2 more layers of epoxy on, and that will stop the fish eyeing. I usually only get fish eyes after that first layer or 2. Once you do the sanding method and wipe it down really well with rubbing alcohol, it will cure that. And your next layer of epoxy will cover up those fish eyes. You won't even tell. You won't even be able to tell that they're there, that they were there. So use your 91% isopropyl alcohol, spray it down real good, wipe it down real good, get a nice clean surface before you do your next layer of epoxy. I don't get too stressed over fish eyes. You can always fix them. And there she is. She's ready. I'm going to go in and spray it again with 2 times clear Rust-Oleum just to be safe. So here they are back on the turner. This is how I'm going to finish that top and bottom. I already did the purple one. I'm going to do the blue one because I forgot to record the purple one. Let me just rearrange my tumbler here. And I'm going to go in with the blue because I thought that this one would be pretty with this pretty royal blue. I'm just going to sprinkle it directly on the top and kind of ombre it down a little bit. I don't want to cover the whole tumbler with this blue because I don't want to cover up the swirls too much, but I do want to add a little bit of sparkle and just a little accent color to cover up those top and bottom white areas, the seams. You can paint it before you do this if you want in the color, but I just go ahead with the blue. I'm not too picky. The less steps, the better for me. And I'm going to go in with my bottom also. And there they are. The one is more purple and the other one's more royal blue. I thought that those went really well with the tumblers. I wanted to do 2 little bit different tumblers. So I'll go in and put another layer of epoxy over this once this cures and put my decals on. And I apologize, I do not show me putting my decals on, but you guys have seen me do this 100 million times. If you want to watch a video of me actually placing vinyl, I do have other videos I can link below. Since these are kind of retro 70s tie-dyed, I went with Feeling Groovy with a cool vintage font there that I absolutely thought was so fun. The orange and the blue kind of pop. I love it. Everything's kind of going back to the 70s and 80s right now, and I just think this is a fun tumbler. and the Be Kind, which is really big right now. The pink and purple looks so pretty against that purple and swirl tumbler. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you guys learned something new today. I absolutely loved making these. It was a process, but it was fun, and it really helped my creative outlet here. And if you guys love to paint and you love to do tumblers, this is a perfect one for you. Thank you for watching. I hope you subscribe to my channel. I have a bunch more videos coming your way. Give me a big thumbs up, and if you have a question or a comment, leave it in the box below. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a beautiful day. Happy crafting.